Okay, let's get into this. Picture, if you will, standing on this wild, beautiful island, Skye, right?
Yeah,
A place known everywhere for its, amazing scenery and deep history.
absolutely iconic.
Yeah, and you might think you know its whole story, especially the whiskey side, but then you stumble across a new chapter, one being written right now, built into that history.
That's where Torabhaig comes in.
Exactly. We're heading back to the Isle of Skye today, but we're focusing on a distillery that's, well, relatively new to the scene, Torabhaig.
It's pretty fascinating because Skye has such a strong, established whiskey identity, doesn't it?
Yeah,
Dominated by one huge name for so long.
right.
So finding a new voice there, one that's clearly been thought about so carefully, is really quite exciting.
It is. And for this deep dive, we've looked at their own website, obviously, to get their side of things, and also some articles that kind of flesh out the story and their particular approach.
Yeah, so our goal today really is to understand what makes Torabhaig different, what's the philosophy, how do their production choices actually shape the whiskey?
And what can these first few releases tell us about where they might be going? They actually call themselves a distillery created by the island Skye.
Mm-hmm.
We want to figure out what that really means. What are the key takeaways for you listening?
Let's dig in.
So let's set the scene. Torabhaig, it's on the Sleat Peninsula, down in the south of Skye.
So it's called the Garden of Skye. It's maybe a bit softer, greener than the really rugged north of the island,
A
perhaps.
little more sheltered, yeah.
And the history bit here is, well, it's pretty important. Torabhaig isn't just another distillery opening up. It's only the second licensed whiskey place on Skye.
After Talisker, yeah. Which was, what, 1830?
Way back in 1830. So the fact that Torabhaig is the first new distillery built on Skye in over 190 years, well, that really tells you something.
Wow, 190 years. That's a long time between drinks, so to speak.
It is. And it wasn't exactly rushed either. The original idea, that came from Sir Ian Noble. He got the permissions back in 2002. But it was only after he passed away that Mothburn Distillers actually picked it up and, made it happen.
And the site itself is pretty special too, right? They restored an old 19th century farmstead.
Yeah, it's not just some modern box dropped in a field. They've integrated the distillery into these historic stone buildings. That renovation, it was a huge job. Started in 2014, took 3 years just to get the place ready.
3 years just for the buildings and setup?
Before they even started making whiskey in 2017, yeah.
That really shows commitment, I think, to the place itself. Okay, but let's shift gears. What about the whiskey? What are they actually making?
Ah, yes, the spirit itself. And they seem to have a very clear idea here. They talk about exploring subtle, elegant flavors of peat.
Right, I saw that. And they've coined a phrase for their style. Smoke with taste.
Smoke with taste. That immediately tells you they aren't just aiming for the highest peat number they can find. They're after balance. They want the smoke to be part of the picture, not the whole thing.
Yeah.
And they do this with the traditional single malt process, but with some really specific choices along the way.
Okay, like what? The sources mention they start with a medium to high peating level for the barley. That feels very Skye.
It does. You expect some peat from Skye, definitely.
Yeah.
But then, and this is key, they use a really long fermentation time.
Okay.
We know they use wooden washbacks, traditional style, specifically Douglas fir is mentioned.
And why does long fermentation matter so much?
Well, longer fermentation gives the yeast more time to create complex, fruity, even floral compounds, esters, in the wash before distillation. So you're building in that taste part of the smoke with taste right from the very beginning.
Ah, I see. So it's not just waiting for the cask. The fruitiness starts way earlier.
Yeah.
What about the stills? The sources say they're designed for maximum copper contact. How does that fit in?
Right. More copper contact during distillation tends to strip out heavier sulfur compounds, and crucially, some of the harsher phenolic elements from the peat. It helps create a cleaner, smoother spirit.
So long fermentation builds complexity. And the copper stills refine it, helping to integrate the peat rather than letting it dominate.
Exactly. It's a very deliberate balancing act between getting richness and ensuring cleanliness and integration.
And there's that specific data point for the Alt Glean release that really seems to highlight this. It said 77 parts per million ppm in the barley.
Which is quite high.
Yeah. But only 17 ppm in the final bottled whiskey. That's a huge drop. What does that tell us?
That's incredibly revealing, isn't it? Phenols, the peat compounds, they change during the process. Mashing, fermentation, distillation, maturation, it all has an effect.
So that drop from 77 to 17 isn't just passive.
No, it shows how much control they're exerting. Their long fermentation, the shape of their stills, how they run the distillation, it's all designed to selectively reduce that initial heavy peat load, leaving a more refined, integrated smokiness alongside those fruity notes we talked about. It's proof they can sculpt the spirit to match that smoke with taste goal.
That really drives home the craft involved. It's not just use peated malt, it's managing the character of the smoke.
Precisely.
And they've given us this really interesting way to follow their progress, the Legacy series.
Yeah, this is a brilliant idea, especially for a new distillery. It's a set of limited releases, and the whole point is to document how their spirit is evolving as it ages.
Like a tasteable timeline.
Exactly. It's not just random bottlings. It's sharing the story of that core spirit as it matures. And the end game for the whole series is their first proper age statement, whiskey.
The 10-year-old.
The 10-year-old, which will come from that very first batch they distilled back in 2017.
So each release we've seen so far is like a snapshot of that 2017 spirit at different ages, maybe with different casks involved.
That's the idea. It gives us little windows into its development.
Okay, let's run through the ones mentioned in the sources.
Yeah.
Chapter 1 was just called 2017, came out in 2021.
Right.
Distilled 2017, bottled 2020, so 3 years old. And it was matured in first fill ex-bourbon casks. They even gave some notes: sea, salt, vanilla, oak, candy, citrus aroma. Palate had mild smoke, apples, candy, burnt oak, vanilla hints. Long finish.
Even at just 3 years old, you can see the elements there, can't you? Maritime thing, the sweetness from the bourbon cask, the fruit, and importantly, mild smoke. Integrated. An early signpost.
Then Chapter 2, Alt Glean. That was summer 2021, again, distilled 2017, but bottled 2021, making it 4 years old. Also first fill ex-bourbon.
And named after a local water source, one of the burns near the distillery.
That really ties it to the place.
It does. It reinforces that, created by the island idea. And Alt Glean, that's the release linked to that 77 down to 17 ppm figure we discussed. It really flags that characteristic at this stage. Okay, next up is Chapter 3, Snock Nai Moan. Expected this year, 2024. Name means Hill of Peat. Another local landmark reference, yeah. Visible from the distillery, apparently.
And this one marks a shift in maturation, doesn't it? Still uses American bourbon oak, but adds Oloroso and Pedro Ximénez sherry casks into the mix.
Right. Bringing in sherry casks, especially PX and Oloroso, which are known for richness, dried fruits, sweetness. That signals they're deliberately exploring how different woods interact with their spirit.
So we should expect something maybe richer, darker, sweeter than the first two.
That would be the logical expectation, yeah. It shows they're actively testing the waters, seeing how their base spirit takes to different influences.
And one more mentioned, an Alt Glean batch strength, a higher proof version of Chapter 2.
61.1% ABV.
Whoa! And described as a sort of farewell to that chapter. Used first fill bourbon, but also refill whiskey barrels.
Batch strength versions are always interesting. Lets you taste it with more intensity, closer to how it is in the cask. And using refill barrels alongside the first fill bourbon would give a slightly different balance. Maybe letting the spirit character shine through a bit more compared to just the heavy first fill influence.
So you've got this unfolding series, chapter by chapter, same spirit, just getting older, interacting with different wood, all leading up to that 10-year-old release.
Expected around 2028. Based on the 2017 distillation.
It's a really transparent way to do it, isn't it? Letting people taste the journey.
Absolutely. For anyone interested, you get to literally taste how time and wood shape this specific distillery spirit. That's quite a unique learning curve they're offering.
And if you want to connect even more, well, you can actually go there. They have a visitor center in Ting on the Sleep Peninsula.
Yeah, do a tour, see the setup, taste the whiskey on site.
They also seem quite keen on building a community. There's a newsletter, something called the Peat Elite Club. And on their website, these Sleet stories, articles going deeper into things like peat science or sharing the maker's own thoughts.
That effort to share the why, explaining peat phenols, talking about their process, it really connects back to that created by the island idea. It's not just here's whiskey, it's here's the context, the place, the thinking.
Yeah. The sources also mention their capacity, about 500,000 liters a year, and that they favor non-chill filtering and natural color for some releases.
Which are often seen as markers of quality focus, right? Prioritizing the whiskey's character over maybe perfect clarity or color consistency using additives or processes.
So pulling it all together, why should you, listening, care about Torabhaig?
Well, I think it's more than just knowing another whiskey name. It's seeing a newer distillery thoughtfully build its own identity.
Right. respecting tradition, but deliberately carving out its own niche with this smoke with taste idea.
And thinking about smoke with taste, it sort of prompts you to consider what kind of peated whiskey you actually like. Is it the big peat monsters or
Mhm.
something more balanced like this? And how do all those choices they make, the long fermentation, the copper contact, managing that ppm drop, the cask choices in the Legacy series, how does that all add up to this specific balance?
In following that legacy series, it's like a practical lesson in maturation. You taste the difference a year makes or what bourbon versus sherry casks do to the same base spirit.
Turns learning into tasting.
Definitely. And it keeps coming back to Skye, doesn't it? The renovated farm, the place names, the focus on the island's character. It feels genuinely rooted.
That created by the island's line seems more than just marketing speak. It feels integral to what they're doing.
So we've journeyed to Torabhaig on Skye, looked at their origins, dug into the craft bine's smoke with taste, the fermentation, the stills, that ppm detail, and followed the story unfolding in the Legacy series.
It's quite a story already.
It is. And maybe here's a final thought to mull over. How much can the specific place, the landscape, the history, even the community around a distillery truly shape the spirit's character beyond just, say, the water or the peat source?
That's a deep question. And how might this smoke with taste signature from Torabhaig continue to evolve? What surprises might that 10-year-old hold when it finally arrives? And what about the spirit they're making now?
Lots to think about there, definitely. Maybe consider which parts of their story or their approach resonate most with you. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.